Okay, we are here with another 5 sheet today. This one from the Huffington Post. Remember, the 5 sheet is an objective document that anyone can use to fill out these news articles, get the useful information out of them, cut through some of the BS these guys like to put in their articles, because these days the news cannot be trusted to deliver the news. We have to find the facts for ourselves, and the 5 sheet's a good little cheat sheet to cut through some of this misinformation. So let's start out with the headline as they write it. Fired Trump officials' ominous warning. There will be more bloodshed before inauguration. So what is that? I think that's a fact. That's pretty straightforward, not a lot of editorialization. Obviously, there will be more bloodshed, is an opinion, but that's just a direct quote. So I think that's a fact. I paraphrased it. An official that Trump fired made an ominous warning. There will be more bloodshed before the inauguration. Alright, known bias, Huffington Post is a left-leaning website, so I should put that on there. The thesis is in this first paragraph here, which is Chris Krebs, the fired former chief of U.S. cybersecurity, warned Friday that there will be more bloodshed from supporters of Trump in the run-up to the inauguration on January 20th. So that too is a fact. Pretty close recitation of the headline, not too much sunlight between the two. How'd I paraphrase it? Chris Krebs warned that there will be more bloodshed at the hands of Trump supporters in the lead up to the inauguration. Alright, what evidence do they have supporting this? They have some quotes from an interview he did on CNN with Don Lemon. Mostly this one big long quote, couple other ones at the bottom. Alright, what's the outline of this guy? Start out with the thesis in that first paragraph. Then they have a little build up to the quote, a little context background, a little description of the quote. Then the big long Krebs quote right there. Then they give this little description of Trump firing him. And then Krebs' final takeaways right there. So, not a super long article, but they did manage to pack a lot of bullshit in here. So let's start cutting through that. False citation. This is the one where you see all these links on all these different points. You must think like, ooh, incited by the president as, oh, that's got a link. I bet if I clicked on that, that's going to have some evidence to the point that this was incited by the president and his allies. Or stormed the U.S. Capitol, that's going to have some evidence relating to that. So false citation is where you have a link which most readers would presume evidences the point being made in the text, but if you follow the link, it in fact does not. So this one is, yes, it's the word incitement right here. If you follow that through, it's about Obama saying that Trump's incitement of the riots was bad. But there's nothing here saying that Trump incited the riots. It's kind of a thinking past the sale thing, where you, in order to read Obama's words and, focus on his argument, you have to accept as a fact that Trump did incite those riots. But they're not putting any evidence forward in that article. So that right there is a false citation. Alright, another one they have is undue emotion. They're really trying to drum it up and, just look at the headline. There will be more blood. What was the name of that movie? This headline is very similar to whatever that neo-Western movie was. There will be more bloodshed before the inauguration. But there's a lot of this overly loaded language. Stormed the Capitol. I mean, at some of the entrances, the police open the doors, and you look, it's like these middle aged, Midwestern people just kind of walking around, and they're like, ooh, what's this? And they're describing that as storming the Capitol. Like, these, you see the interview, these people thought they were allowed to be there. The police open the door, they're taking selfies with them. Some of the scenes were more violent than that, but they're not giving a thorough picture. They're just taking the most extreme, they're painting the most extreme, the most emotional picture that they can imagine here. Another one was disgraceful scenes that shocked the world. So throughout this, they're using the most loaded language they can. And that is clearly in an effort to drum up the emotionality of the reader. Undue emotion right there. All right. Another one, strawman feigning ignorance. So they had this quote. Let's see. It's right here. It talks about Trump firing Krebs after Krebs's agency publicly debunked the president's bogus claims of election fraud. So, that's an interesting way to put it, because a big part of people's unease with the election is the lack of transparency. And Krebs himself admitted in an interview he did with Stephen Colbert that we don't have the ability to audit our own elections, and how he thinks that's a problem. That's something we should improve in the future. We should be able to actually know if there was cheating or not. He's confident there was no cheating. But, like, if we had to go back and check, that's not something we're able to do right now. But it's something we should improve in the future. So, well, he might have debunked the half of the arguments about election fraud. He did so just by saying there was no election fraud, just by claiming that there was none. He did not debunk the other half. In fact, he admitted to the other half. So that's very much not giving us the full argument here. This is very much a straw man feigning ignorance, where they're just picking the facts, picking the arguments that line up with their side of the narrative, and those are the only ones they're presenting, pretending like the other facts, the other arguments do not exist. Alright, let's get on to the final section here. Big picture, what's going on? What do we think, the purpose of this article was? What actual useful information came out of this? So this feels to me, in my opinion, like part of this effort to build the narrative that Trump supporters are not just, deplorable racist types, but they're actual terrorists. This has been building up in other outlets as well. We've seen similar stories in other publications. But the events at the Capitol simply don't bear that out. And, if they were terrorists, they would have been aiming to injure people. Out of the 5 deaths, obviously that's really unfortunate. That's really tragic. One of them was a woman shot by a Capitol police officer. Three of them were people who had medical emergencies. And then one of them, it looks like now, is the most recent one that we're hearing about. So the information's still the most murky on that one, but it does appear to be a Capitol police officer that died. So that's, really bad. But out of all these people that were there storming this building, if their goal was to be there killing Capitol police officers, it seems a little odd that this was the extent of the damage they did. They took the Capitol building, went around, took a bunch of selfies, and then left. That does not line up with the traditional understanding of terrorism. So, because those events do not support what they're describing, instead, they're having a bunch of quote unquote experts come on to predict what will be happening soon. Experts like this Krebs guy who talks about there will be blood. And, yeah, so I feel like that's the main purpose of this article. They're just building, supporting that narrative. All right, couple other smaller things. This one line in Krebs's quote just felt like it, total lie or like a canned line. So there are steps that can be taken by various individuals, and I hate to use the passive voice there, so I'm just gonna call it out. So that line is meant to be heard like he changed his mind on the fly in a moment of passion, but that was likely a scripted line that he practiced before. That just reeks of deceptiveness right there. And people who use these intentionally deceptive tactics to sell their messages on television, when they do interviews and stuff, they're the same type of people who tend to lie about other things. So keep that in mind when you're assessing the credibility of a source. And the final note I have is that he used the word insurrection. I've seen this used other places, a lot of other places, and I still don't get this one. How was this an insurrection? How is this an attempted coup? Another word we've seen elsewhere. Was the plan to occupy the Senate and start passing laws? Uh, I don't know if this insurrection had worked, if it had been successful, what it would have looked like. I haven't seen anyone spell that out for me, so if you have an answer to that one, please let me know. Either drop it in the comments or submit your own 5-sheet on this one. Alright, well, that's what I got for this guy. Not a really long article, but really dense in terms of deceptive tactics. So keep your eyes out for articles like this, and keep your eyes out for this particular narrative that right-wing people, specifically like Trump type supporters, are domestic terrorists. Because this seems to be a narrative that's building up. They're trying to gain steam with this. So keep your eyes for that in the coming days. Alright guys, see you next time.